This One Up podcast is brought to you by Dell. Visit Dell.com/gaming for all your gaming needs. From high-end PCs to consoles, games, and accessories, Dell has what you need for gaming. Dell. Go play.
And we're back again from Santa Monica here in the echo chamber. God, I hate having to balance that out. You have no idea what a pain that is. But this is the One Up Radio podcast special from E3 2007, Part 2. John Davison and Shane Bettenhausen are here with me, as is Dan Shu from EGM.
That's Dan Shushu.
Yeah. my tag actually says Dan Shu.
So, what?
Really?
Well,
it does.
It says
Dan Shu.
Yeah. Wow.
He's a pair of shoes.
And my Chinese nickname is Fan, so it's Dan Fan Shu.
Wow,
why is your Chinese nickname Fan?
That's like a baby Chinese name.
Oh.
Yeah, like it's just, I don't know why we're talking about this.
Why don't we call him Fan around the office then?
I think we will now.
Oh, that was a mistake. Why did I do that?
Fan. So,
oh, God.
Anyway, we figured we'd get this crew together, talk about games. Since we did press conferences to death yesterday, we'll leave those things buried. But I know that Shane feels compelled to come back and wrap up a couple things.
It's funny, when we do this podcast, you think people would talk about, what we said about the press conferences, what we said about games, but instead they pick really strange things to obsess about. And one of the things, I made that offhand comment about Metal Gear being like possibly allegorical for the, video game war that's going on right now, and that was the theory.
The video game war or real life war?
The console war and real life war. But Kojima does work on multiple levels, and he's kind of impenetrable, and he does a lot of symbolic stuff. And I thought maybe there were little elements of that, but I wasn't actually posing some grand thesis. And what strange people on the boards did, they went back and tried to pull out things to support this, and everyone got all obsessed about it. I wasn't saying.
So the point you were making was the stuff in the trailer that said that oil was the war of the 20th century, and war is an industry in the 21st century, and that's what's needed to perpetuate things, right?
Right, and there's more than that too. But it isn't the first time that he's had in-jokes like that. Like last year's TGS trailer, there's obvious stuff about the real life video game console war. But yeah, I wasn't saying that that's exactly what he's saying. I was just tossing that out there. The other thing I wanted to catch people back up on is Mario Galaxy, which
you hate.
Yeah, apparently I hate it. As I was walking,
I was told that you were visibly smiling while playing it.
I was smiling, and as I was walking around E3 today, people were coming up to me and be like, "Why do you hate Mario?" I'm like, "No, I don't hate Mario. In fact, I really like it, but I'm still not completely sold on the level design based on the levels I had played." But then today there was a roundtable, and they showed some more levels. They talked about how there are huge planets where it's so round, so big that it isn't round anymore; it's flat. And there are other levels that are not even on spheres. And Jeremy was saying there's 40 galaxies, 120 different areas. So apparently the variety is there. So I don't need to be worried about everything just being a little planetoid, because that was my fear, And I want this game to be as expansive and cool as Mario 64. Mm-hmm. And as much as I liked Mario Sunshine, I felt it was a little limited by its focus, and I didn't want this game to be quite as limited.
Okay, so are you saying that you were wrong, or are you just trying to make up for people not calling you out?
I think people may have misconstrued my sentiments.
Misconstrued. You came up to me and said, "Mario, disappointing." You said it just like that. I didn't. You used those words. You were like, "Mario, disappointing." You didn't like it.
No.
I didn't. I'm not saying you hated it.
Well,
you definitely.
I think you definitely did. You did definitely say it was disappointing.
I can still be disappointed and think a game is really awesome.
Yeah, but the listener should understand. I know Shane. We all know. We have to kind of. Everything that comes out of his mouth, you kind of have to put a filter on, because he exaggerates. He's never neutral. He either loves something, he hates something. It's always one extreme. So
it makes him so good on podcasts. He polarizes.
Well, and then I was at the Barker Hangar at E3, where you go and play games, walk up and play. And
by the way, we're going to do Barker.
We'll talk about that in a minute.
Right, I want to let people know we are going to cover Barker Hangar.
But that's where Knights was. You couldn't actually play it. Sega would play it in front of you, and the Knights for Wii, the Knights sequel, and I was impressed by that, because I expected it to be really terrible, and it wasn't terrible, because the videos we'd seen previously didn't look very good. And it wasn't bad. In fact, it looks more promising than I expected. So I told Jeremy Parrish that, and he's like, "Oh, you hate Mario and love Knights. It's like 1997 all over again." I'm like, "No, it isn't." So I just wanted to clear the air on those two things.
You need to do a Retronauts with that, definitely.
We should. I was actually a huge fan of Knights back in the day. So.
You should probably clarify the third thing as well.
Oh, yeah. When we're talking about Resident Evil and being set potentially in Africa, we don't even know that. We just think it's set in Africa. And I made a comment that, Africans are genetically predisposed to be better at marathons, and there is scientific research for that, and I can show you, I can point you to those links, but there's no way is that a racist comment, and
there was no intentional racism.
No intention of that. And in fact,
however, this football season, Shane will be doing predictions in Vegas for who might be winning the Super Bowl.
No, I won't. And what's even weirder about that joke is it wasn't entirely my joke. I kind of borrowed.
Whose joke was it, Shu?
So now Shane wants to give me credit for the
racist joke.
Not that I'm a racist, apparently. But yeah, Shu, after the Microsoft press conference where they first showed that trailer, you said...
So someone pointed out on the boards today that the guy in the Resident Evil trailer is Chris.
Yes.
Is that true? Do we know for a fact?
Well, it's always been presumed from that original trailer 2 years ago. We don't know that, but it looks like Chris. So
it definitely looks like him, and the characterization is definitely there.
Yeah, Capcom has never really talked about this game.
No.
I was so glad to see it, not just because I predicted it, but because it just looks so cool. And it's kind of one of those things you'd seen a few pictures of here and there, but it's been going on for a while. You've been thinking about the game, and to have a little more to actually hang your hat on as far as like talking about the game is awesome.
Well, I like how unique it looks. It doesn't look like Resident Evil anymore.
It totally doesn't.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm really happy about that. All right, so let's dig into some games. For me, E3 started with Mass Effect, and I haven't had a chance really to go crazy on that as much as I want to.
It's interesting because people on the boards were like, "Why aren't people talking about this? Why aren't people talking about that?" And I mean, today and tomorrow we'll do a lot of game spooging and potentially hating on. But yeah, Mass Effect is holy shit.
Well, I can sum it up real easily, and I've said this to people, now I'll just say it in front of everybody, is I am more excited for Mass Effect than I am for Halo 3. And I mean, I am a Halo fan. I'm not the Luke Smith Halo fan of the world, but I've been a big fan of Halo. Mm-hmm. I've been a big fan of Halo for single player because I wanted to see where the story goes, and I am excited for Halo 3, and I think the single player looks really good. But Mass Effect goes above and beyond what I've wanted. Like when I go to play games on my time, that's my entertainment. That's like, you might choose to go, play a sport or watch TV or read a book. And for me, it's sitting down and playing a good video game and really getting engrossed in it. And God, it's so amazing how quickly I got engrossed in that, especially when the first time using the conversation system. It's so quick to get drawn into, and it's so natural and easy. And we've been watching that for a while, and watching them do it is one thing, because you watch someone demo a game and you think, I've seen guys demo a game. This guy's demoed this game 50 times. He knows exactly how to go through this segment. He's just doing it because he knows how it works.
So what makes Mass Effect's dialogue better than the dialogue trees in KOTOR?
Because in KOTOR, you read the dialogue, and then you hear dude on the screen parrot it back. Or they didn't even have voiceover in that.
Right, it's exactly. Whereas in this, the dialogue options. So there's people have seen the screenshot. There's that little hub, and it has like 6 blobs around it with the different reactions, and the expressions that are written out aren't what he will say. They are the sentiment that he will convey. And it appears that he doesn't even always say the same thing for the same choice. There's a bunch of things he could, because he's responding to what path through the script is unfolding.
So it's very contextual.
So it's very contextual, and it's picking sound and animation to keep the conversation flowing going in character. And also the emotional range is always mapped to the same directions. So the top left-hand corner is always the most diplomatic option, I think. I think that's what they said. And then the bottom right is always the most aggressive. So you can also play the conversation just by knowing kind of roughly on the emotional range where you want to be going. So you can keep the flow of the conversation going just by tapping the stick and keeping it flowing along. But sometimes it'll just be 2 words, and he'll spout a couple of paragraphs off those 2 words.
What's really cool about the 2 words is it's not so super high concept where they don't give you some flowery explanation of how dude is thinking. It's more like just go dress her down. Mm-hmm. It's exactly like what you would be thinking in the back of your head of how you're going to phrase a sentence before you phrase it.
And it goes all the way to, in some instances, kill this person. Like you can finish a conversation just by pulling your gun and kicking them down and shooting them in the head.
Wow.
But that very much depends on how you've been building the character up to that point, because there are elements of your character and your stats that impact the conversation system. So if you've been building up your charisma a certain way, you'll get these blue paragon conversation options, which will appear as an extra option that you wouldn't previously have had. where it'll be an extra charming way of doing things. And similarly, if you're being particularly evil and you're building up all your sort of mean stuff, there'll be extra evil like the killing people pops up when you sort of plumb the depths of being like a real mean guy.
So it's not just light side, dark side, it's more nuanced.
And also, light side and dark side do not balance each other the way they did in KOTOR. You know, in KOTOR, you could be really good, and then you could pull yourself back towards the middle. Now you have good and bad stats permanently. So if you've been bad, you can't flip halfway through the game and suddenly become good. You're always going to have those evil deeds in the character's history. And it'll also impact the way certain characters or races will respond to you throughout the game.
People in the world are always going to know that you behaved however it was that you behaved.
Yeah, if you're the guy that killed this character and he was instrumental to one of the sort of side paths, anyone with any connection to that will be, you're the guy that killed that dude. I'm not helping you.
Well, and to like what Garnett said, like in KOTOR, like when you can read faster than you can hear the entire dialogue thing. So if you read it, you're like, okay, I just skip to the next thing. So you're always cutting off. After a while, you're always cutting off the conversation. But in this game, because you don't know what anyone's going to say, it plays out like a movie. And it's complemented by these awesome animations. Like these alien races, these people look real. They do the eyes well. The facial reactions are kind of subtle. It's not just a big smile or a frown. It's eerie almost. And then so like when you're insulting somebody, like you could just be a smartass all the time, and you're insulting this big alien about his race and kind of implying that it was a weak race because they got wiped out. And then just you could tell in the tone of his voice, and even though he's an alien creature and doesn't look human at all, that he's not happy about this.
Right, he starts to lean forward, and you can see him scowl. And we were talking to Greg, and he was like, there were a few years ago they were building characters out of 16 pixels, and now they're able to tweak the muscles around an alien's eye to convey like that he's getting angry at you.
It's funny, that reminds me also of Heavenly Sword, which has really amazing cutscenes where previously people talking wasn't something you wanted to watch, and you would non-moving talking heads in a game, you just keep going. But now as like emotions and voice acting get better and better, and like you can watch the faces and it looks real, it's like watching a movie, and it's not so boring to watch people talk anymore.
Yeah, it's weird. Like you could really sit there and watch people talk in Mass Effect, and it's like you feel like you're watching a sci-fi movie.
Well, another thing about Mass Effect is that here at E3 they debuted this new visual filter which we hadn't seen previously, and like it's kind of divisive. Some people don't like it.
It's been really divisive.
I think it looks kind of cool.
I really like it. It's a bit like the early, before the Silent Hill effects got really wild. It's just a film grain, really fine noise filter, everything, and it from a distance, it smooths the edges off a little bit, and I think it's allowed them to do some stuff with the by focusing the detail in some areas and not in others,
like
to keep
depth of field stuff.
Yeah, there's a lot of shit going on, and there's a lot going on with the focus effects and stuff. But the grain really, it gives it a gritty.
I really, really like it too.
Because they said they'd been looking at like late 70s, early 80s sci-fi movies, and a lot of the sort of the grand sci-fi movies, like, Star Wars in 2001 and Silent Running, and like lots of these sort of big, even things like Black Hole, and big spaceships and big epic robot fights, and and even the music, it's like this sort of 70s analog synth sci-fi music.
It's very Vangelis.
Yeah, it's like Moog stuff. It's very evocative.
Nice. Yeah, I think we're all in agreement that Mass Effect is one of the best games here.
Yeah. So the counter argument, by the way, on the filter, since we're all we all liked it, because I've had this argument with Mark and Kathleen, is that they felt like looking at the television, it looked like there was something wrong with the television.
I think it's a little distracting, and it's going to take me getting used to, because that's all I could pay attention to the first time I'm looking at it. But I think after you're about an hour in, you probably won't notice it.
Probably not.
There's like other subtle things they did. Did you notice that they darkened the edges slightly?
Yep.
So it kind of puts more of a it gives a weird depth of vision.
They also do a lot with that depth stuff and fading things out to direct. They were saying that they're using it to direct your attention to something, because the Unreal Engine allows them to do so much stuff. I mean, the first thing they showed us when we went down to the planet was that six-wheeled buggy thing that hops around. The Mako. The Mako. It gets dropped out of a ship and it splashes down into the water, and the water comes up over the entire Mako, and then water droplets drip off it, and it's all in engine. And they're saying when they can render stuff at that detail in engine, when there's so much shit on screen, you don't know what to look at. So the reason they're blurring things out and darkening things is to tell you really subtly what your attention should be on, because otherwise it would just be overload and everything would be glistening and shiny and sparkling. And
so we've teased about 1 billion times that Shane's been playing Heavenly Sword, and it's here playable.
Right.
So share some impressions now, Shane, about Heavenly Sword.
I've played all the things that are here, and it's really. I'm really impressed. Like I was very skeptical about this game because the game these guys made previously was Kung Fu Chaos for Xbox, which I did not like. I gave the game a 5. I didn't think it was a very good game. And so yeah, Heavenly Sword. First of all, the presentation, like they hired Weta, which is the New Zealand studio who did all the special effects for Lord of the Rings and King Kong, to do all the cutscenes and all the voice acting and all the motion capture.
And it's Andy Serkis doing a bunch of the characters, right?
He's the main villain, King Botan, and it's stunning. I mean, the cutscenes are unbelievable. They're the best cutscenes I've ever seen in any game, bar none. Like, unbelievable. Like,
which is interesting, and a counterpoint to that I want to get to in a minute is talking about Fable, where the vision for that is no cutscenes at all.
Right. Well, so yeah, these cutscenes, they bookend the levels, and then when you start the levels, it's a lot like God of War. In fact, the game kind of begins a lot like God of War, and the combat. It's easy to pick up and just like you're mashing buttons and having fun, but then when you realize, oh, you have 3 different stances, you have all these complex combos, and you unlock more combos as you go through the game. There's a lot of depth there. It's very rewarding. The only negative I would say to the combat is the enemies aren't that tough to beat. So if you're used to like Ninja Gaiden, the enemies aren't fighting back that hard. Most of the grunts are just grunts. They're in your way.
See, that's weird. 'Cause I didn't play it as much as you did, but maybe 10 minutes, and I found the enemies were blocking way too much.
Maybe they turned the AI up. I didn't play it here because it looked like the same things.
Yeah, I played it here today, and then like the enemies are just blocking so much.
You may be using the wrong stance because like you have these.
No, I know. Yeah, I was using different stances. I did use the range stance and the power stance.
Right, but there's actual visual indicators to tell you which stance you should be using to fight specific foes.
I might not have.
How's that work?
There's a little glow of different colors, and you learn like, oh, if it's a little blue sheen, I should be using speed stance.
That's what glows? Your swords,
like
or
the enemy right before you hit him, and there's a lot of audio cues too. Like you can counter most enemies' attacks if you attack at the right moment. Mm-hmm. So yeah, there's definitely you learn how to play this game. But the combat is really fun and rewarding. But that isn't my favorite part of the game. My favorite part of the game is the aftertouch system. When you pick up anything in the game, and you can pick up every object and pick up every enemy. When you throw them with the X button, if you hold down X, you then become that object, and you guide that object with the 6-axis. And it's the best use of 6-axis I've encountered because it's really fun, and it takes you out of it a little bit because you can do things that you wouldn't normally be able to do, like you can steer a cannonball around a corner and hit somebody with it, but that's really fun. And there's these parts where you're controlling a catapult and you're fighting thousands of troops in a battle, and you're controlling the cannonballs and blowing things up. It's really fun. And when you get to a room and you can break the tables and pick up swords and throw the swords at people and kill them, and it's really, really fun. Yeah.
My biggest concern about this game, and I haven't had a chance to go play the demo, was that just every time they've shown it, it seemed like it had a potential to just be an arena game. So,
there is no platforming. So that when you first start playing this game and you realize I can't jump for 10 minutes, you're like, why can't I jump? But you can evade. The right stick is like evasion, and the evasion is very effective. And as soon as you realize, okay, I'm not going to be platforming, and there are platforming parts, but they're all those quick time events. They're called hero sequences.
But whether there's platforming or not, is there actually some like adventuring in the environment, or is it simply cutscene encounters? I
will say it is mostly that. There is not a lot of exploration, and there's not a lot of platforming. It's kind of a ride that you play through.
It did seem like God of War. Same
it's
pacing
a lot like God of War.
Fights, basically, where you're just running down essentially down a tunnel and having a sequence of battles.
But there's a lot of variety because you do those sequences where you're sniping, and there's big boss battles, and there's different types of fights and different types of levels. So the variety is more than you would expect. It isn't just an arena game. It isn't the same thing over and over again.
Can you explain the whole sword thing? I'm still not clear on it. So she has the sword that she's not supposed to have, and it's killing her, right?
So yeah, at the beginning of the game. I think I'm allowed to talk about this.
They mentioned it in the conference, and then she had all the tattoos come up all over her body.
At the beginning, like her tribe is being killed by this giant army, and like you begin the game fighting against 4,000 troops, and you die because you're outnumbered. She doesn't have the heavenly sword, and she decides to use the heavenly sword, which is this god sword that she knows is cursed, that her father's been protecting. And when that happens, she becomes cursed, but she becomes amazingly powerful. But she knows like by using this, she's going to have to die.
It's constantly draining her health, is that right?
It doesn't drain your health, but it's like corrupting her and killing her.
Okay.
It's more just a plot-based thing. Yeah. But when you don't have the sword at the beginning, you only have one stance. So like when you actually do get the sword, it unlocks all these other moves.
Okay.
It's interesting. But yeah, so far I'm very impressed. We should get the review code soon. I'm looking forward to playing.
When's it out?
September 28th.
I gotta say though, I also don't agree with you on the combat because I'm catching up on old games. Before I came to E3, I'm playing God of War 2, and it feels to me like it moves so much faster that like Heavenly Sword just feels kind of a little bit slower slower and more cumbersome. It's still a neat game overall, but I kind of prefer God of War 2's combat. It's just quicker, faster.
There is a different feel, and the animation, the animation's really elaborate.
That's part of it, yeah.
But it's pretty, but it's a little bit of a trade-off because it is a little slower than God of War. Yeah.
If you like these sort of games, I saw a game at THQ which actually was the best game in their booth area. That's not even due out till next year, but it's called Darksiders. Did you check this out at the THQ?
No, but I mentioned it to Brian, EGM's previews editor, and he said you were crazy.
He said I'm crazy.
Other
really?
people say you're crazy too. I haven't seen it. Other people are like,
well,
I haven't seen it.
Whatever. I think it's really cool. Like, number one, it's not even due out till like late next year. It already has like some very cool looking enemy designs. The whole premise of the game is that it starts with the apocalypse and the end of humanity, and you play war. Which is one of the four horsemen of the apocalypse.
Wait, is this the game that was once the four horsemen of the apocalypse from Acclaim?
It sounds similar
3DO?
to it, but if it, it might.
Oh my god, but that was no one else.
No, that couldn't be that. This is like their own. They built their own game engine for this. So you play war. They're going to redesign the character because that was one thing I told the guys. Like, dude, right now the character does not look like war at all. So they have to redo that part. But you have like your war horse that you can summon. You're basically
Does war look like the Jackie from the Darkness.
Actually, right now, War looks like a demonic version of Samus Aran. So I'm like,
oh really?
What the hell? This is like, yeah. And the game has like a very Metroid-ish kind of vibe to it. Right now, it really looks and feels to me like I was watching. I was like, wow, this is like Metroid crossed with God of War. What an interesting combination. And it takes place in Earth, right? So like he's going around with this giant sword that he can summon, kicking that shit out of these demons, and then he has to also fight angels because you're on Earth and it's after the apocalypse. So the angels and demons are fighting over Earth, and the angels are like super advanced, like technologically, and so then he comes into like an area that's like an abandoned army base or whatever, and he grabs a minigun off of a helicopter and starts fighting the angels after he's just been raising hell on the demons. It has some cool potential. I thought it looked pretty neat.
It sounds like something that Todd McFarlane would write.
It does sort of sound like that.
I don't really mean that in a good way.
You know what? There are a lot of God of War clones here, and it's hard for one of them to stick out, I think. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
Conan, who's doing that one? Because there's Conan
was right there in the same.
Conan
was right there in the same booth.
THQ.
And let me tell you what, this is not Conan.
Because Conan is just God of Conan or Conan of War. I mean, it's like obviously a knockoff.
Conan of War sounds like Conan O'Brien.
And there's
Don't do that to God of
Hellboy.
God of Hellboy. Yeah.
God of Hellboy.
Yeah, Conan is kind of a mess.
How is that? Because when they first showed Hellboy, I thought it had a lot of promise.
It's by Chrome, and they're a pretty good developer, but yeah.
People were calling us out last night for saying Chrome's a good studio. I'm like, I've always been impressed with what Chrome's put out.
I enjoyed Ty the Tasmanian
I
Tiger
enjoyed
2.
both 1 and 2, which Chrome did both of them, right?
Yeah. Then there was King Arthur. That was awesome.
No.
I'm just telling you why people say that, dude. It's because they have games like that.
I mean,
but people were calling out saying Ty is a good game. Well, yeah, Ty was a good game.
It was. It really was.
A lot of people didn't play it because they thought it was a baby game and didn't want to be seen playing that kind of thing. But it was a more than competent, Jack and Daxter, Ratchet and Clanky kind of knockoff, right?
Shoot, I'm curious. Did you get the chance to play Little Big Planet?
No.
I really wish that you had.
You got to play it.
I have.
Is it at the hangar?
Is it at the?
No.
Is it at the hotel thing?
Yes.
It's not in the arcade.
I am going there tomorrow. And I'm going to play everything I possibly can in the Sony Sony arcade.
Maybe it's not there. Brian played it today. Anyway, you should play it, because you're the doubting Thomas on this game, so you should try that one.
I'll look for
I
it.
don't think you're not really the doubting Thomas completely, are you?
I'm not as excited about it as everyone else is.
I think a part of your insides are dead, Shu.
That part of my brain died a long time ago. The last I saw of it was a GDC demo, and I'm like, well, it's just like you're just like charging through a level, just like jump. Like it didn't look like it took a lot of skill. You just run and jump and run and jump. Like
go get him, Shane.
Just push. Eventually, you're gonna make it to the end. And there's these points where everyone has to work together anyway. So it's kind of like, well, it doesn't matter what kind of lead you have. You're gonna have to wait for everybody so you can all do this puzzle, and then you restart the race over at that point. And I understand, that's just the one demo they made. Like there's a lot of possibilities. You can make a more. We just did a preview in EGM where they talked talked about, they can make levels that are more Mario, like where they're really skill based, So when I see that, I think I'll get more excited. But from the Game Developers Conference demo, I was just like, man, it's sharp looking. The textures look fantastic. Those fabrics look real, but it's adorable. But I'm not that excited.
I haven't played it here, but I can see if there's a beta or whatever this year, playing that game more than anything else on PS3. Just
you're different though now. When you have kids now that you have kids, you tend to look for more.
When you played it here,
family-friendly
Shane, what did you get to play with?
I got to make my own levels with one of the producers, and it's so easy to use and quick and fun. And
all right, so how did it work?
Is it as easy as that? There was a video where it was
really
just going,
easy.
where it was like select a texture and go.
Yeah, I mean,
and you've made something.
You pick a shape, and when you're picking the different shapes and materials, something that's there, and you can using the analog sticks, grow it larger, smaller, and just add them, attach them, and just put things on it. Suddenly, everything's.
Are you always making essentially two-dimensional objects, though?
Yes, I mean it takes place there are 3 planes, but everything is basically 2-dimensional.
But be honest, guys. You guys are going to go into the editor. You're going to throw some things around, and then you're going to run your guy through it. That was kind of cool, and it's really easy. But you're not going to take the time. None of you guys are going to take the time to do a well-designed, lengthy, properly balanced, skill-based level.
No, I'm going to take the time.
You're going to throw a lot of shit in there.
Edit other people's levels.
You're going to run through it, and then you're going to be like, well, you know what? I'm going to play other levels.
I agree with you. I think the average player won't have the time to from the ground up create a whole level. But you can take other people's levels and edit them and change them. And it's really easy to stick things in the level and stick things together and suddenly make a new object. While we were there, we made this giant dragon car thing and just kept putting stuff on it, and it's moving around, and then you can give that to somebody else, and they have it in their game. And so I think it's just so expandable. And if you talk to the producers, they really don't know what's going to happen with this game. It's kind of like The Sims or Spore or something, in that it's just a big playground, and you don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah. And to be clear, I'm not down on it. I'm not saying it's a bad game. I'm not excited about it as much as you are.
And I think your mileage may vary. I mean, if you play a bad level, you might think this game sucks.
Yeah.
So
are you saying essentially that you don't think that the audience is going to take to it the way that the team thinks they will? Do you think gamers are not that?
I think everyone who saw the editor, like I said, I think people are going to get excited. You're going to want to try it. You're going to do a couple of simple levels, but very few of us, and we're all pretty hardcore, and we're all into our games. I think very few of us even will want to design a proper level that's actually fun for others to play. I think I'm going to throw a bunch of blocks on there, throw some pornographic stickers on the blocks, and then check this out, and then barrel through it and realize that wasn't really a well-designed stage. Mess with it some more, and then after that, I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to play the levels that came with the game and download some of the better ones.
Speaking of the stickers and stuff, have they said if you can pull photos off your hard drive and apply them to the environment?
They say they want to include that, and they hope to have ways of policing it.
To stop Shu from posting pornographic.
Yeah, they hope to have.
Oh, look at my little cute guy! What's he crawling up?
Nice!
What's this big veiny mountain?
Well, there's another weirdly ambitious game that's hidden from view that you got to play, John, which is Fable 2.
I did get to play that, yes.
Which is strangely on the DL,
well, it's very, very, very early. He actually opened the demo with, you're going to see a lot of games at E3 at varying levels of technical proficiency, and I absolutely guarantee that this is the worst tech demo you will see.
And he being ultimate over-promiser Peter Molyneux promises the world every time.
So we open, again, it's very sort of grand, I want to challenge the very foundation of how you play video games, but you've been saying that I've changed because I've got kids. Peter Molyneux, I think, has changed because he's got kids. I think there's a lot of people in the industry that you're hearing about where, because they're getting older and they've been around games a long time and they're at a different point in their life now, you could see it starting to affect the way they're approaching the design of the games, and I think this is what's happening here. The two things that he wanted to do is he wants anyone to be able to pick up. It's a big, intimidating role-playing game, but he wants anyone to be able to pick it up and get something out of it and to be able to enjoy it. And then the other thing was, I don't know if you've ever, people listening have ever heard Peter Molyneux talking. He's sort of, this very polite Englishman who's a bit C-3PO-like in the way that he talks about things. And he's sort of, so I was watching Casino Royale, and I was watching James Bond getting hit in the bollocks with that huge rope thing, and it dawned on me that in movies the hero never dies. And he's like, and he pauses, and he's like, so that's what I was going to do in Fable 2. So you never die. You never die in Fable 2, which everyone was. There was like 5 people in the room as he was doing this, and everyone was sort of like, yeah. And he's like, because the death mechanic in video games has been essentially the same since Donkey Kong. It's like you die and you go back to the beginning of the level and you start again. So what happens in Fable is there's a lot of, he said like 50-60% of the game is combat. And some of the combat is 5 or 6 guys, and there's a lot of the way that it scales is that there are fights that you can wander into that you really shouldn't. So the way that it sort of scales the character stuff is that you don't really want to go and engage on something that you shouldn't. But if you do get beaten down, instead of dying, you fall, and you're lying on the ground, and you, depending on the character attributes, you will eventually get up.
What?
You will eventually get up.
You fall and then you wait.
You will eventually get up on your own. But if you want to
you
get
have
up,
a Med Alert bracelet, and what you do is you hit the
shut
button.
up and let me finish. If you want to get up faster, you can trade experience or gold or something in your inventory in order to get up faster. So you're in this fight, you get beaten down. If you want to get up immediately, then you need to trade experience points to get up. If you don't get up and you have to wait to get up, the characters continue to beat on you. And over the course of you being beaten, any injuries that you sustain while you're lying on the ground are permanent for the entire life of the character.
So you have these scars.
So you have scars. You become disfigured, and the more
does it affect your stats?
Yeah. So the more disfigured you are, anything on charm or personality is affected by your physical appearance. So if you're lousy at combat and keep walking into fights that you shouldn't get into, you'll get beaten up, and you won't be able to engage in missions that require like charm or personality or persuasion, or because people will take one look at you and they'll think that you're a soldier or you're some kind of like evil character, and you get like really fucked up apparently, and like people will take one look at you and they're not going to want to do anything with you. So the consequence of falling in battle is more than just losing something and starting again. There are parts of the game that will be way more difficult because of the way that you look.
I like the Donkey Kong style better because so you have to make
I like
a choice.
The Prey style better.
Do you want to give up some of your experience points, which no one's going to want to do? I don't want to do that.
To get up faster.
To get up faster, otherwise sit there and then continually get penalized.
Yeah. So you can like wander into fights that you need to pick your battles. Essentially, is what you need to do. Is you only need to wander into a fight that you think you have a pretty good chance of pulling off. And the way that it guides you is that it won't just dump you in the middle of a fight that you can't.
Well, so that part's a good idea where it kind of makes you a little bit more tentative and afraid because we know, okay, well, if this boss is too big for me, I just reload the last save. It's like it makes you a little bit more cautious. Maybe that's a little bit more realistic, but still, it's like, when you die in Crackdown and you lose some of those orbs that you've built up, it kind of sucks, you know, like
in Sonic and the ring, you don't pick up all the rings after they burst out of your body. I mean, it's taking, I guess, that idea to the
but like in
extreme.
Fable, like that's all you want to do is level up your character and build a stronger character. I don't want to go take.
But if you're wandering into fights that you shouldn't, you are essentially committing to a more combat-oriented story for yourself.
Here's what's odd to me about this is, on the one hand, you have the option of spending experience points, which is a very like abstract game mechanic sort of idea. But if you don't spend them, then you take damage to your avatar in the game that impacts your game as if you were actually laying on the ground in the game environment being beat on. But it's not like I'm just like paying some magic fairy to lift me off of the ground with experience. It's just that's a weird trade-off.
He didn't define specifically what the cost would be. He said there will be a cost to getting up immediately or getting up very quickly, and he just said it'll be gold or experience or something. I haven't thought of it yet. It was a very sort of Peter Molyneux moment. It was like, there'll be something that you do.
What worries me is he has these really wildly ambitious, innovative concepts, but then you say like the actual mechanics of the game, it doesn't look very good, and you don't even think it's going to be out in the next 6 months.
I mean, it's very early right now, and the other thing he demoed was the one-button combat. So melee attacks are mapped to the X button, ranged attacks are mapped to Y, and magic is mapped to B, and everything is based on combinations of pressing one of the buttons and a direction, and it's all contextual and all procedural. There's no like predetermined moves. So if you hold the X button, he'll do a block, and it's context sensitive to both the environment and to where the characters are, and then it'll break the camera off the action and try and show the fight in the best possible place. And then as you're doing these sort of, like, if you can press and hold to do a block, and then from a block you go into a move that's more spectacular, and you start chaining these moves together with directions. And when you're fighting multiple people, it's based on who you're pointing the stick towards as to what he'll do. So if I have one of you on either side of me, and if I'm blocking and holding towards Shu, I'll hold the sword up like that, and if the guy on the other side rushes towards me, I'll try and push him with my hand. And it's all based on relational to where he's standing. And the other thing is the environment plays into it in a big way as well. So if I'm walking along and there's a bottle on a table and I hit the range attack, if I don't have a gun or a bow and arrow, I'll just pick up the bottle and throw it at the nearest guy in the environment. And so everything is based on that. And then this gradually ramps up until eventually it becomes the demo that... Was there a video of the demo he did at GDC, the bar fight with the stick figures?
I didn't see one, but...
Where he had this vision of a bar fight that was like an Errol Flynn movie, essentially, where it would be using everything in the environment as part of a fight, and you could have this spectacular, like, old-school movie sword fight, swinging on the chandeliers and throwing bottles and stuff getting broken and everything. And someone could do it by essentially just doing it with one button. And he said they have that working now, where if you can jump, he'll jump up on a table, and if the fastest path to attack the character that you're facing is to leap on the chandelier and swing and kick him, then that's what the character will do. But everything's based on the physics, and it's all procedural based on where you are. So very often, you'll hit a button and the character might do something unexpected. All you know is that the attack is going to be on what you were intending to attack.
So the question starts to become, how much do you want to have to be responsible for actually making the cool shit that you see on screen happen?
Mm-hmm. And he handed it over because he goes, what I want to do is I'm going to get you into the middle of a fight, and I'm going to pause the game, and I'm going to give it to you, and I'm not going to tell you what to do, and I want you to... He's like, I don't like button mashes. I don't want you to just mash it. He goes, you can play it like that, but if you want to see the cool moves, then you need to be thinking about how you're pressing the button. And it was kind of interesting because you could push a guy against the wall and then hold the button down, and he'd force his sword up on the guy's throat, and then you could pull the stick away, and while he was finishing that guy off, he would move around and attack the guy behind him. And he'd do things like, you'd see him blocking, and then as a guy came towards him, he'd throw his sword from one hand to the other and then start attacking the other. It's all very like old Errol Flynn movie kind of stuff, and it's quite satisfying. Even it's not just I'm just going to jab on one, but it's not God of War jabbing on a button and just doing the same attack over and over and over. It's quite graceful, and it's quite slow. It's very sort of dancey in a way.
Is it like Assassin's Creed's combat? No.
I haven't played Assassin's Creed, but I think the principle behind it, from how people have described Assassin's Creed, is very similar, because that's very procedural and right. Context. It's very context sensitive from what I've heard. And this seems to be something that a lot of people are doing now, and that to be accessible is to think of the controller differently. I mean, at the beginning of the demo, Molly was like, we have not got everything we can get out of these controllers yet. This thing has, like, whatever it is, 12 buttons on it. And we're not doing it. So one of the things and this is what the Halo Wars guy said as well, is you don't want to change where things are. You always want certain behaviors to be the same thing. So in Fable, the D-pad is an emotional response, and X is always a melee attack, and Y is always, So the emotional stuff that he talked about was, if you want to be a real dick in the game, you can use the emotions as well as the aggressive stuff. And he was talking about, there's an old woman who's talking about her son who is lost in the forest, and she's telling this terrible, terrible story. And he goes, if you tap left on the D-pad, your character will start laughing, and the woman will respond to the fact that you're laughing at her story. So he said, you have a laugh and a cough and a fart, and it's like various things mapped to the D-pad.
He's big on having the farts in there.
And based on what you do while other people are doing things, it will affect the way that they perceive you. And it's taking a lot of the ideas from Fable and just like pushing them as hard as he can. It's very ambitious.
Yeah. And so you have high hopes for it, or do you think he's going too far afield?
I admire his vision, and if he pulls off some of it, like Molyneux for the last 20 years, he'll throw out these great ideas. Some of them will work, some of them that don't. The ones that do work, we're going to see in every game out there in 2 years,
Right. All right. Well, that sounds like a good plot to take a little break. In a minute when we come back, we'll talk. We got to get some Halo Wars in there, since I know Shu got to play a little Halo Wars.
I saw you playing Crysis today.
I did play some Crysis today, and then we talk about sandbox games. We can't leave sandboxes without talking about Burnout. So.
Yeah.
So don't go anywhere. Stick around. We'll be right back.
This One Up podcast is brought to you by Windows Media Center. Your Xbox 360, your music, your photos, your TV shows, and your videos with one connection.
All right, we're back, and I misspoke myself a little bit. Shu did not actually get to play Halo Wars, but you did get to check it out, which not many people have done either. So give us the skinny. How's it looking?
So if you're a Halo fan, I think you're going to, and you like RTS games, obviously, real-time strategy, obviously you're going to like it. And I know that's just like the simplest thing to say. It's such an easy thing to say, but it's really like, they took all the source material, they did it really well. Like all this, they took the original sound files from Bungie. So, like for example, when your troops meet up with a group of grunts and elites, it sounds like a real Halo fight. Like what you see in what you hear in the first-person shooters. Like the needlers sound like needlers, from the firing of the needles to when it hits you and the crystals kind of break apart and stuff. The warthogs, they sound exactly like the Halo 2's warthogs, and they even had the same suspension and same physics. Like when
it's the same physics system. They showed there's a break in the environment in the demo level that they showed, and yet they fired these two warthogs and they like both hit the lip and both pushed up into the air and then bounced down the other side, and the way they hit on the other side, they landed on their front wheels and almost like bounced over forwards before crashing back down. So there's like they look like the vehicle. It looks like you're watching a Halo game from like 100 feet in the air.
Yeah, exactly. 'Cause the physics are exact. Like when you run into people, when the warthogs flip around, it does feel like Halo. Just you're watching it from a really far distance.
Is the camera angle any different than you'd expect? Does it zoom in at times or anything? Or?
You can change it. You could do the typical, like just like Command and Conquer and Lord of the Rings for 360. You could spin it around. You could zoom in a little closer, a little farther away. But that's the thing for me. It's like once you get past the Halo stuff, we didn't get to see a whole lot in terms of like why this is a special.
I want to go back to the camera stuff though, because they talked about this a little bit, and the way that it's set up and the way that the game itself handles the camera is different from CNC, and they said that if you're not experienced with an RTS game, you will never have to touch the right stick to move the camera, because its default setting is actually quite close into the combat, and it's a bit more skirmish and company heroes like, in the way that it's like these series of. They're not these huge battles, the stuff that they showed. I mean, there was some sizable stuff, but it wasn't like thousands of troops all piling into each other. But the way that the camera is set up is that it's always looking at the action from a good vantage point, and they said that you will be able to play it without having to worry about spinning the camera or getting disoriented or anything. And the levels are the stuff they showed was this sort of sequence of events.
So what would happen? I didn't catch that part. Like, is there something you do to zoom in on?
Well, you can zoom in and out, but they said that what they found was very confusing when they were looking at things like CNC was when you start spinning the camera, you start to lose track of where everything is in the world, and it's not as easy as like skipping a mouse around and being able to know where you are. You like get lost in it. So what they wanted to do was build the level and build the camera system so that you don't have to do that kind of thing in order to play the game and see what's going on.
How much did they talk about the control scheme? Because that was like the reason that they said Ensemble wanted to do this game was that they had figured out the way to do.
It's really simple. There's like none of the holding down the trigger and then popping one button and hitting the other.
She loves that in Lord of the Rings.
I think they did it really well because I'm able to like access groups, heroes, powers. So they didn't really have to strip anything away from the PC game to make Lord of the Rings Battlefield Middle-earth 2 for 360. Everything's just in the palm of your hands. But in Halo, it is simpler. It's like, you could double tap A to select all units on the screen, and you could draw. It has the paint feature where it draws a big circle, and then if you just move this circle around the units on the screen, everything it touches selects that group, and then you have this bigger group available to you. Or you can. I think there are ways to select all units.
You can triple tap, and it'll select every active unit in the game world.
I don't think I've ever triple tapped in my life.
I would say new thing to do now, triple tapping.
So it's like you can like do that, and everything in view will go, and then you do it again, and it'll like every unit that's available, you can say, because like the demo ended with what was it called? A scarab?
A scarab, yeah.
Which is this big robotic four-legged thing with this huge fucking plasma cannon that's like burning up the environment and like destroying everything in its path in this sort of fire. And he said if you wanted to at that point, you can select every active unit and just point it on that one thing.
So how are the graphics compared to CNC in Lord of the Rings?
The graphics are really good. They're really detailed. Like from our vantage point, you can say like those are grunts, those are elites. There's a banshee ghost. Like it's very clear, very sharp, and like there are little cool touches too, as you expect in a real-time strategy game. Like when you pan over the Marine base, like behind the barracks, you'll see a drill sergeant, and you'll see like 4 or 5 guys doing push-ups, and then in another, I don't know what this building does, but it had a crane moving crates around, and they put it on the ground onto a conveyor belt. You see this missile that's sitting in a base partially underground, and there's steam coming out of it, and a lot of little touches. So it's done really well. But I think, really, honestly, besides this, the Scarab was really cool. And, they ended the demo with an orbital, they call it a Mac gun from your ship that's orbiting in space. It's a magnetic accelerated cannon, whatever. So it blasted down and destroyed the Scarab. But if I was to replace all those units with generic soldiers or aliens or whatever, and just called it something else, I don't think anyone would really care. It's pretty straightforward real-time strategy game.
It's a Halo. It's Halo. It's for Halo. My take on it was that this is for Halo fans.
It's for
not for RTS fans. I mean, you might get sucked into it if you're into RTS, but the primary audience is the 4 million people that are going to buy Halo 3 that want more Halo.
Yeah, but I mean, there's probably a lot we didn't see. To be fair.
Yeah, I mean, the demo, they showed it, and then they were like, "Oh, that's it," and like, really? That was like 5 minutes.
Yeah. Well, when's it due to come out? Not till next year, right?
They didn't say, but yeah, it's next year. I mean,
right,
so they're going to give it some space between 3 and this.
Which makes sense. It gives you a chance to come back to Halo and get excited about it. And I guess now that we've seen a little more single player, there's more to be excited about. I guess that was the big relief, is that everybody who went and saw Halo 3 in single player, the response overwhelmingly was, wow, it looks so much better than the multiplayer beta.
Actually, speaking of like the Halo universe, before we go off, me and Patrick met with Shane Kim today, and he categorically said there will be no Halo 4.
Really?
Yeah. That they are done.
Do you talk a lot about the Peter Jackson game project?
Yeah, which I assume is Halo Chronicles, which it's been named a few times. It sounds like that's what the Jackson thing is, but that's the future. And the reference to Star Wars, that's kind of what they were talking about. And that not only is, at the moment, the intention is the integrity of the core trilogy will remain the core trilogy.
But does that open the door for Halo Episode 1 with Jar Jar?
Potentially down the road, maybe when they decide they want more money, that's what they do. But after Halo 3, the Master Chief story is done, and everything that they do will be support stories that are pre-Halo, post-Halo, but not in that core story.
Which we didn't mention, Halo Wars it's a prequel to the Halo trilogy.
How many years is it?
20 years before the events of Halo 1.
Right.
So does that imply that perhaps Master Chief dies at the end of Halo 3?
I don't know, but that is Halo 3, it is done, it is over, it's like the Star Wars trilogy, it's a complete unit. We're not going to fuck with that.
That explains the cliffhanger ending of, Empire Strikes Back / Halo 2.
Exactly, yes.
Oh, you're such a cynic.
So single player.
So you saw it. What do you think? Does it really look that much better? What's your impression now from Halo 3 single player?
Halo 3 looks really, really good, but it's a subtle beauty. It's not like an immediate, when you see Unreal Tournament 3 or Gears of War, those are the kind of games where immediately you're like, wow, holy shit, this game looks good. Killzone 2 is even a bit of that.
UT3 is almost like graphical sensory overload. There's so much crazy things in your face.
It's so ornate. The levels are so realistic, so gritty. Halo's not like that. It's the problem is why it's not as immediately obvious that Halo 3 looks great is because it's a different art style. It's more colorful. Like they're brutes wearing shiny purple armor.
Yeah, Sean Elliott was making fun of like the rainbow Skittle color, of Spartans and how it's taking him out of the game.
Yeah. So it's a different art style, but and the problem with the Microsoft press conference video, they showed this. I don't know if everyone saw it, but they just showed a bunch of quick flash clips of Halo 3, just like a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit there. And it was really, no one came away impressed with that because you couldn't really see anything.
Yeah, we got on them yesterday for that. I mean, that was way too cut up.
But if you can sit and watch the game being played, like, it's pretty good. It's beautiful because, like, we saw this jungle level and the sun's poking through the leaves, through the branches, and it's like this soft. So it's not this, like, harsh game lighting. It's like it's very soft and subtle, and then it casts these nice shadows on the ground. When you're in this cave, there's these red lights that cast like a realistic glow. All the textures are really sharp. The jungle looks really full. Like it doesn't look like video game trees or branches or leaves or anything.
It's not like
that.
the perfect dark jungle.
But then again, it's also not like the Crysis jungle. We'll talk about that tomorrow.
Yeah, but yeah, definitely. We get some of the PC guys on for that. So, John, did you see the Halo? You saw Halo 3 also.
I saw both of them. Yeah.
So, I mean, what's your takeaway from it?
Exactly. I mean, exactly the same. You need this is why I was saying yesterday. I thought the trailer that they showed was lousy because it does not allow you to see what is good about Halo 3 because
there was only
you can't catch it.
There was
in
like a
those
3-second clip of the Arbiter fighting with Master Chief, and they should have shown like a lot of that.
So the mission that they showed us was going through the jungle, and you are part of this fight. It's not a squad, but it is a fighting force of Marines, and the Arbiter is there, and he's talking, and he's like saying, "Oh, I'm going to go over here," and I'm, there's this constant chatter between the unit, and the Marines are shouting at each other, and then as the grunts are, the jungle thing they said, well, the grunts are asleep. So as your squad enters the outskirts of this Covenant base, the grunts that are on watch out and everything are like leaned up against trees and they're asleep. So you can actually sneak in and like smack them with your rifle butt and start taking out the sort of outer defenses like silently before you actually start the battle properly. But then there's a ton of ton of Covenant in there, and you work your way to this big set piece at the end of this thing that they showed. But it's the thing that really showed off to me. They went from that, which is with all the cool lighting, to they showed the what's it called, sand trap?
Sand traps. Yeah,
sand trap
is
a huge
level.
desert environment with these ruins under the sand, and while you're playing, the sand is getting kicked up by the wind, and like it's this huge environment. And when you see the stuff using the saved films video editor, and you can freeze the action, you can freeze it mid effect. And you can see how subtle and cool some of the stuff is, and why you really want to play this in high def and on a big screen, because there's these cool sort of like little trails of light, and the way that the explosions are, and the way that everything is, the laser bolts and plasma flashes and everything. They're like, I mean, it's beautiful, and it's like so high definition and so smooth, and the effects and everything just add this extra layer to it.
And the funny thing is, like replays and save films, it's not a new concept, right? Like, people have done replays in hockey games, basketball games, football games. I just saw Tony Hawk's Proving Ground today, and they have a really awesome film editor in the game, and you can put together clips, add effects, and all this stuff. It's nothing new, but I'm like, why isn't the Tony Hawk like taking snapshots or video of yourself skateboarding? Why isn't that as cool as a Halo thing? It's because you've never had replays of games where there's conflict, like people love a replay in Madden where it's like, oh, check out this catch, this one-handed catch, and I land my foot's inbound, or I look at this tackle. But in Halo, it's awesome watching, like, okay, here's this guy driving a Warhog, and he doesn't see this guy on the hill with a Spartan laser aimed right at him, and then you could stop it right at the moment where the Jeep explodes and your body's flying, and you could pan around at 360 degrees and look at it from any angle, and you could see all the action from another perspective. And it's just,
when you're playing
different.
multiplayer, obviously you only ever see your view of the fight and the people that were fighting alongside you, but you don't know what's going on the other side of the map. And in these things where there's a ton of people playing, you can like, okay, well, this was me, and I'm going to watch what happened to me. Oh, now I'm going to go over here, and you can see these. I mean, particularly the comedy moments when these like, oh, we didn't see that coming, and like people setting traps and stuff for people. There's pieces of the action that you were never aware of previously that now you can just go and check it out and see how people handled it. And
it's like a moment of like, if you're playing in first person, someone comes up behind you and assassinates you, you just get the message and you just see your body slump over. But now if you see a replay and you see your buddy coming up behind you and then taking a hammer and smashing you,
or you can see how long he was behind you, and you didn't notice.
And it's the kind of thing where you're all sitting around and watching it and everyone's like, oh, it's a different.
Do you see what's happening here as these guys talk about it? It's like, this is really cool thing to like watch observationally, is like the more you guys talk about it, the more your eyes light up and the more like into it you get.
I can see a lot of people like spending an awful lot of time watching these videos, because I think the other thing is, you will be able to get better at Halo 3 by watching save games. By watching your own save. I mean, it is the coach going back to the locker room and like watching the videos of the game to find out what the other team was doing. And it's built into the game. And every single game is saved. You can choose to keep it or not keep it, but the default thing is it's saving all of the data from every game. They said if you're playing like a 6-hour deathmatch, it will eventually choke because there's only so much that the hard drive can take. But it's not saving video, it's saving data. So the files are really tiny. So this is why it can't spit video out to, a Microsoft YouTube-y kind of thing.
Save state.
It's safe state. So it has to be in the game engine, and the game engine will process it. But every single game you play can be saved, and then you can go back and watch it and work out. So you can, like, if I get in a game with you guys after I've played it and I didn't do very well, I can sit and I can go and work out why you're better than me, because how you play a certain map. And then I can go back afterwards, and if I notice that you have certain habits in a map, I'll be able to exploit that.
Yeah.
So I'd say from the enthusiasm, it's not going out on a limb here to say you guys think that the excitement's warranted, that it's going to be
when we were talking about Halo being intimidating as a multiplayer game, and that they must be doing, this is one of the things they're doing to make it better for people that are inexperienced. It's not about the playing, it's the after you play stuff that's going to help.
Well, there's obviously a lot of people here at the show that are interested in like catching into the let's do multiplayer and campaign-based, futuristic first-person shooters. Shu got a chance to play multiplayer where we did here today, this afternoon, Fracture. And I don't know. That's the whole deal on that is they're saying that they want to make that a big mainstream game, right? And John's got that look on his face.
That's not going to be a big mainstream game.
Why do you say that?
Well, for a start, it looks very. I mean, I admittedly I didn't see it as much. I didn't play it. I was watching you guys play it. It looks like a very derivative sort of arena shooter with environmental effects.
It has this whole shtick, like you can destroy big chunks of the environment.
Right, someone went back and played Magic Carpet from 15 years ago, or whenever the hell it was, and went, hey, that was kind of cool.
Well, it's drawing off Red Faction, right?
And Red Faction was the big Geo.
This is like the spiritual successor to that Geo mod sort of.
But it's pretty extreme. I mean, it's like craters, or like you can shoot things. And what was that thing you were doing where these huge pillars were coming out of the ground?
It's a spike grenade. You drop it on the ground, and it raises this tall, skinny pillar of rock. But it's really designed like I couldn't think of what practical use that's for, but they said what you do is you stand on it because it glows before it does it, so you know where to stand, and then it raises you up like 20, 30 feet into the air for a better, if you want to snipe, if you want to have a better vantage point.
It struck me as a gorgeous tech demo that it doesn't strike. Sometimes you could tell this game's going to do really well. It was just like, no, I can't see no one's going to buy this game.
Well, I was talking to Michael Donahoe from EGM about this, and he goes, he wasn't that excited about multiplayer, but he really likes the game because he said in a single player, Garnett, you saw more of the single player than I did. There are puzzles. There's ways to try to figure out how am I going to get into this base that's based around moving the Earth. Like you got to drop the land so you could get underneath the base wall, or you got to raise yourself up so you can reach another point. So there's you have to think about it. But in multiplayer, my problem with it was. Well, I did see Michael do something cool. Like some guy was shooting him and he was reloading, so he dropped, I forgot what the grenade is called, whatever one that raises the land. He drops one in front of him and creates an instant wall to protect him from the incoming shots, and then he kind of hid behind it and let himself heal. So that was kind of cool. And what I was trying to do was drop the other grenade that sinks the land to, if an enemy was close to me, because what happens in the game is it takes you longer to run uphill than it is to run downhill. So if you're on higher ground, higher elevation, you have the tactical advantage. But what happens is people start throwing grenades and people are shooting. It gets a little confusing, I think, because your stage, the battlefield you're on, is constantly changing. And if you're in the middle of like grenades doing opposite things, like to your left the ground's going up, and to your right the ground's going
insane.
down. It's like I don't know where I am all of a sudden, and then someone throws in a vortex grenade that puts you in a little mini tornado. It's just like I'm like I don't know what's going on. But like to be fair, I was talking to one of the president of the developer and said, he asked me what I thought. I'm like, well, I'm really confused. I don't know what's going on. But part of that's like because the frame rate's really bad right now, and they have another year to work on that. So hopefully that will be smoothed out.
Another year?
Oh yeah, it's not. Yeah, it's not even due.
Oh wow! In that case, maybe they're going to do. All right.
It's really early, so like when the frame rate smooths out, you'll have a better idea of what's going on. And then they need the little stuff that you're used to, like the messaging, like you got killed by who so and so, or you killed so and so. Like I couldn't tell if I was killing people half the time. Like if they were, the ground was raised and I don't see it, they're out of sight, and I don't know if my grenade worked or not. But there are a lot of little indications and things that they need to tweak yet.
Yeah, the thing with single player so far for me is that the backstory is pretty cool, but the actual character that you're playing so far hasn't been fleshed out nearly enough for like LucasArts, who portrays have said all along, hey, we want to make this all about the character and have great characters. They haven't been pushing that at all. They've very much been pushing the tech, which is why I think it comes off as a tech demo. And number two, and this was the big hang up in Red Faction, is that this sort of gameplay mechanic leads to too much. Often leads to too much in a design where, oh, well, look, there's a metal plate. Oh, I throw the spire grenade underneath it, and it pushes the metal plate up, and that lets me get through. Oh, look, there's a little bit of a hole. I throw the grenade that makes the ground sink, and I make the ground sink and go through, which is kind of cool when you're showing it, but an entire game of it.
Derivative innovation?
Yeah. I mean, like, if you played Red Faction, you knew that, like, there were places that you just knew, oh, I'm supposed to break through
I'm at a
wall
dead end,
here.
and there was no apparent other path.
Right.
I wonder what I'm supposed to do.
Oh, I need the rocket. Yeah, so, if they can mature the game design and the level design as they have with the idea of like how much train tough formation they've done, then they could be onto something. And if they can couple that with a really cool character that matches up with the kind of interesting backstory that they've done, then they're onto something.
Yeah, they need to make you feel like you're smart for figuring out what to do.
Definitely, and not just, oh, look, there's the metal plate. I wonder how I get around this. Whatever. So, if they're going to hit mass appeal, I don't know. It's going to be tough, and it's going to have to be less fiddly. I mean, it seemed like there were a lot of controls to learn there, a lot of different stuff. They might want to consider, I hate to say this because I hate them to take stuff out of it, but they might want to consider simplifying some of the overwhelming number of choices that you have there with like all the up and down and spire and vortex. And
I think that we're talking about this more than it deserves.
All right, that's fine. Well, I know one game. All right, I'll move right out of that one into one I know you're ready to talk about as much as we want to, which is Burnout, because you came back glowing from playing that thing.
I played a lot of Burnout over the years, and I mean, I know a lot of people have said they have Burnout.
But John, you recall I liked Burnout before you liked Burnout.
Yes.
Really?
When Burnout 1...
Shane liked the crappy Burnout.
When Burnout 1 came into our office, Acclaim brought it by, and John's like, what's that terrible music? And I was like, this game's really good.
Yeah.
But wait, they were never terrible, though, right?
They were never terrible. They were
just, the music was terrible.
The music was terrible. And the only ones, the way that it would force you to watch the crashes and everything, and they weren't as visceral and fun. And then sort of Burnout 2 was much better, and then Burnout 3 was awesome.
That was the coming out party.
And then Burnout Revenge was obviously great, and Dominator, less said about that better. This is, I mean, he said, oh, just try it out. And it's all open world for a start. So there's moves that you've not been able to do in Burnout before, like you have handbrake turns and everything, and it's very exaggerated physics. So
Did you do parking?
Yeah, there's all sorts of shit you can do in the environment.
That was so cool. Parallel, it's like the guy's like explaining is like if you ever like what's the first thing you do when you get a handbrake turn and you figure out you can do it and you see it done in the movies, you're like, I want to see if I can parallel park. So there's like a Burnout award for there's like parked cars now in the game, and oftentimes they'll be separated like with a space where you can parallel park.
Turn into the space.
You handbrake turn and slide into it, and it grades you on how well you did on lining up into the space.
What blew me away was the persistent world nature of it. I mean, as a multiplayer game, there can only be 8 people in the world, but it's 72 square kilometers, which I googled that. It's 30 square miles. of roadway, which is pretty big.
Close to as big as San Francisco.
Right. So it's a huge city with a lot of, and it's the main streets and all the back streets. And one of the things it does for the persistence is there are stats for every single stretch of road in the game, and based on it tracks your buddy list and everyone that's played the game. And reaching a top speed or doing a crash or the various things that it requires you to do in a sandbox world, it's tracking. So if you boost down a hill and you've boosted down that hill faster than anyone else has ever, the little tracker in the game will log the fact that you have the record for that stretch of road, and then everyone else in the game will then be judging their performance in that part of the world against you, and that applies to absolutely everything.
Wait, how does it work? Like, if you have the record and I go visit that road, the game's going to tell me.
So if you and me are on each other's, so it'll track who has the record for that thing,
right?
And if we're on our friends list, it will make a bigger deal of the fact that it'll be like your friend JWHD has the record on this stretch of road, and it'll sort of goad you into trying to beat it.
Oh, okay.
Well, which then kind of builds on the next mechanic, which is that what happens when that starts to occur in the game that you guys are both in is if it's your record and he's like beating it, then you're going to go see where he is on the map and go try and wreck him out.
Right. So I mean, there's some crackdown persistence to it in that there's these joinable games, and 8 of you can be in the world at once, and because it's all sandbox, there's no contrived events per se in the game.
I love you start your own like races.
Yeah,
you're making your own game in the world.
You pull up at the stoplight, and you pull L2 and R2, and all the other cars at the stoplight you are then racing against. And if one of the cars near that, within the catchment area of that race challenge, if one of them happens to be one of you guys, you can say if you want to join in the race or not. So it's not like Test Drive where it was free, but there was still an element of it being contrived. Like, you could challenge other players in the world, but the races themselves were at set locations. You can start a race wherever there are other cars, and it can be a one-on-one or it can be an 8-player race, and there's the things you can do. And then the crashes are the same. It's not those sort of massively sort of orchestrated, almost like playing crazy golf with cars thing. Now you drive along and you see a bunch of cars, you hit L1 and R1, and it flips the car up in the air, and then the challenge is to make the crash last for as long as you possibly can.
It's almost like a rhythm game element.
It's a rhythm game then, because as the car hits the ground, if you hit X, it will bounce the car back up into the air, and then you want to hit other cars. And again, if you're in the world and you see me doing a crash, you can come and give me a nudge to help me keep going further along, or we can join in the crash and do it together, and we're bouncing off each other and doing shit in the world. So there's these sort of collaborative. So I mean, I would imagine that if you get 8 like-minded people, like, we're going to do a crash and we're going to crash together, and we're going to see if we can crash from the top of this hill to the beach, and like by bouncing into each other and trying to do
it gets like synchronized crash.
Right. Well, he was saying that there are elements of the crash game whereas before it was like playing golf with cars, and now he said it's a combination of Katamari and Madden with cars.
Well,
that's a weird combination. That's weird.
I think the other thing you have to talk about are the graphics, because we've seen Burnout Revenge on Xbox 360, which was like an Xbox game with a little better lighting, and after coming from that to this, it looks so much better.
There's so much shit in
this game's hot.
The crashes, as the cars are buckling, and it just looks beautiful. Like, it looks really good.
Do you remember that demo? Which was that a 360 press conference where they showed that car crashing into the wall?
That demo was by Pseudo, the guys who went on full auto.
Yeah, it was Pseudo. That's right.
That was when the original XNA demos, before Xbox 360 was ever even announced.
Okay, so you remember those demos? Yeah. The crashes, real time in this game, look like that.
Yeah, they do.
And that killed me. I was like, whoa, that's exactly like what we saw in that press conference.
To keep the persistent world and the sandboxing, one of the things that they've changed fairly dramatically so crashes are back, traffic checking is back. Like, a lot of the stuff that were taken out for Dominator are back, but in a different way in this. But the interesting thing is that if you hit something head on, previously that was it. There was a crash, and there'd be a crash animation. It would reset the car. In this, if you crash into something, there was one of the crashes and again, it's all based on how you hit the thing. Things will crumple. I was in the Stallion, which is like the Mustang kind of car, and there was this like shitty old van coming around a corner. I hit it so hard that my car just tore through the thing, and it like just bust open this van completely. It fucked my car up completely. But there's a rule in Burnout that if you crash in a way that you still have 4 wheels, you can drive away from it. So I basically drove through this this van. Came out, there was this spectacular animation where there was all this shit going everywhere. My car's getting all crumpled up, and it sort of bounced out of the back of this van, and it's like in pieces behind me. And then I jabbed on the accelerator and I wheel span and started driving again. It was just like so much more satisfying than...
Another really cool, satisfying thing is if you're playing multiplayer and you crash into somebody, if you have the PlayStation Eye camera, or presumably the Xbox camera, whatever that's called, like it snaps a picture of them.
Oh, the look on their face.
The look on their face when they get killed.
So they were showing it.
Yeah.
That's why they were showing it on PS3, is they had the PS3 camera there, and that was so cool because they were playing it with someone back at Redwood Shores. And like I was, whenever you'd wreck, it was like, so I was talking to them about that, and they're like, well, you know, when we originally did this, we had it set to where it snapped that picture a half second after the takedown. It's like, but we changed it now to where it takes it about 2.5 seconds afterwards, because what we found was like, when people get taken down, they started to want to pose for the picture. And that's exactly what happened, is we like take down the dude in Redwood Shores, and he was like playing in one of EA's lounges, and he would like have these looks on his face like, ah! It was really funny, like, you know, like holding his head or like holding his hands up or whatever. It was really
it really
funny.
humanizes it. It's kind of cute. I like it.
And you'll be able to save those pictures, and you'll be able to drop them into your friends list and send them to your friends over PS Network like that.
I
So
thought,
you'll be able to.
is the 360 version here? I didn't see it.
No, it's not. No, it was just showing. They're just showing on PS3.
It's only on one pod at Barker Hangar.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Yeah,
and
there was a line.
It was on 2 pods at the press conference, and that's all they've got.
Wow.
I mean, it's pretty downplayed. I mean, considering how awesome it is.
Yeah, and it is really awesome. But I guess there wasn't so much waiting for the other racing game that was here to play that was on 360.
PGR 4?
It's good. It's fine.
It's very competent. I don't know. There was...
You said you were bored with it.
It was kind of
I gave
boring.
you that lead in because you told me you were bored with it.
It was just... I mean, it's got bikes now, which is cool. I mean, but, you know, Test Drive did that. But it's a prettier version of... I mean, when I was watching it at the press conference, I just thought they shouldn't call it... It's PGR wet, basically. Because, you know, there's a lot of nice rain effects. And it snows as well. It's not just rain. And if you'd seen all the videos and screenshots, you would think that in PGR it's raining all the time. It's not. But
it's snowing sometimes.
It's snowing sometimes, and it is dry sometimes, and it's 9-day, and it's there's small locations.
Competent.
It's quite competent. I mean, things that they have done that are more interesting is the career mode now is a proper career mode, and it's more character driven than. It's about you as the driver, not as you as your car collection. It's not just chasing points like. Previously, you were chasing kudos points or you were chasing race points, and that was it. Now you are specifically racing against 72 other like racers in the world, and you are trying to work your way up the rankings against these other characters. So that's probably the biggest change they've made to the structure of the game.
What could PGR do then to get you excited? I mean, what could it do? I mean,
it could have been out
day,
next
right?
year is how it could have excited me right now, because we're not done playing Forza yet. It's
Don't forget about GT5 Prologue coming around the same time,
which apparently looks unbelievable in HD. I mean, everyone's like, no, don't watch it in the game trailers window. Wait till you can watch it in proper HD.
Yeah.
All right, so PGR4, what's your projection on how that's going to do this fall? What do you think it's going to be like? Are they going to find something to make you interested?
Maybe, but I mean, right now, it's gorgeous. I mean, it looks way better than the last PGR. But I mean, it's another fucking racing game on 360.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it really is, much just like PGR3, it is really struggling with, am I a serious racing game or am I an arcade racing game? I'm both and I'm neither.
To me, it seemed like the needle was a little more towards arcade this time.
Little more, yeah. And the bikes kind of help that.
Yeah.
And the way they're doing cockpit view on the bikes is kind of interesting, in the way that it leans. But
it seems like there'd be some kudo balance issues there, because when they demoed it and they showed how quick you could rack up the kudos on the motorcycles, I thought to myself, wow, that's going to make a real imbalance.
Well, the way they're balancing it is, I mean, you can get kudos by doing wheelies and endos and stuff, but when you're doing those, it's impossible to control. So.
Okay. I mean, the kudo system has always been a big point of contention over that game anyway. Yeah. I mean, your facial expression is how a lot of people respond to it.
Yeah. I mean, I've always struggled to be really enthusiastic about it. I mean, I can appreciate it, but it's not... Like, you know, Forza's doing a very good job on the realistic end. Burnout is going all the way into arcade stuff. And then the next big sim game, as Shane said, that everyone's going to want to play is going to be GT5.
All right, that's fair enough. I wanted to change gears completely for a second because I was down at Capcom today and had an actual chance to check out the Zapper. I remember we were talking the other day about the Zapper
yesterday, and yeah, I like the Zapper. I think it's good. I wish it had more rumble, and I think you agree, right?
Well, you don't even really feel the rumble, dude. I mean,
it's very faint. I was saying,
it really doesn't feel like
as much as I hate buying all these batteries to power my various Wii peripherals, like I almost wish they had put like an optional like rumble thing in it for the battery to make it shake.
So I played Umbrella Chronicles as you did, Shane, and the first thing I did since we talked about it and we didn't know the answer was I stopped and like checked out the Zapper itself, and the people at Capcom were really cool. They let me like explore it, and like this thing is actually really cool. It feels good. It's made out of the same plastic material as the Wiimote, so it has that nice, heavy, good, weighty, solid feel to it. The front handle, where the Wiimote fits into, has a little cord guide, and then that goes down into the handle and curls up under the heel of your palm, and where the nunchuck part fits. So it's concealed, very tightly put together.
It doesn't feel like you've like cobbled this thing together out of rubber bands or something.
But you could cobble one together out of rubber bands and sticks.
Could, yes.
Make one in woodshop.
You wouldn't come up with anything that worked as well as this. I mean, it works. It's really nice.
You couldn't come up with anything that works as well as this.
Yeah, you wouldn't.
It has a trigger. It has a trigger.
How does that work? Is that a mechanical thing that presses the Z button for you?
I believe so.
Yeah, I think it is.
Yeah.
The B button?
Whatever the thing on the back of the Wii is called. Z's on the nunchuck, right?
Yeah. Well, my point was that most people probably couldn't craft something better than this. I suppose someone who was like really good would have no problem doing
$20 for a piece of bent plastic is, I don't know, seems a little much.
All right, but the idea of it is very cool, and you do feel like a I mean, let me tell you what, playing Umbrella Chronicles with this thing, you do feel like a badass because it's like you're holding this, Mac 10 submachine gun sort of deal, and you're blasting down the zombies. That part was really cool, but I have to agree kind of with Shane that right now I think the sensitivity needs some work because it's very hard to get the crosshair to stably move across the screen. It just jumps around.
What the hell was that?
Please quiet your cell phone before taping a podcast, Garnett. Well, and I complained that like the headshots, they're kind of hard to do. It's a real skill shot, and you really want to do it because it's a difference of hitting a zombie like 8 to 10 times versus one hit. So
yeah, well,
it's all about headshots.
It is very much about headshots, and there's lots of stuff that you need to pick up in that game. So it's you need to be able to place the cursor accurately, and right now that part's not there. But
so Umbrella Chronicles is House of the Dead, basically, right?
It's a little more than that.
Yeah, and with the analog nub where it is now, it kind of feels like an FPS because you are looking around.
I wouldn't go so far as to say it feels like an
FPS. It's a quasi-FPS kind of.
So it's not entirely it's not entirely on rails. There is an element of.
It's entirely on rails.
Oh, it is.
It's entirely on rails.
You just have there's a broader field of vision than what it's rendering for you.
Okay. Right. So like with the analog stick, you can look to the left, look to the right, which you actually need to do quite a lot because there's stuff in the environment where you need to like blast boxes to get ammo out of it and pick up extra weapons. I know, pretty uncommon deal there.
It is still a arcade light gun game. It's it's slightly evolved.
But arcade light gun games are fun. Did you know? I mean, I've had a lot of fun playing arcade light gun games.
I watched the video at Nintendo. I saw that chick jumping around, looking like she was having a really good time. So, I'm sold.
I thought it was pretty fun.
But stuff like that, light gun games they're all fun on some level. But you're gonna pay $50 for a light gun game.
Well, I think if you're gonna pay,
and with your Zapper, you're paying another $20.
Yeah. Well, I think RE will have hopefully enough content to make it worth its while and be a long experience. I'm more worried about like Time Crisis 4 on PS3 and Ghost Squad. Those seem like more like things you put 50 cents in and walk away.
Yeah, it's like the Saturn days, like all these light gun games that when Virtual Cop first came out, we were excited about it, but then it's like 10 minutes later, like, oh, yeah.
Well, and hopefully there'll be some more games that take advantage of the Zapper. Right? Maybe.
Well, yeah, I think for FPSs, that's the whole idea. Is like they wanted to like evolve FPSs on Wii. So
I think for a real first-person shooter like Medal of Honor, they showed a brief video of that. Like if you use a Zapper there, I think that could work because no one liked Medal of Honor using the Wii controls.
There's still the problem though of centering. And you've talked about
that's the big deal right now, right?
Of how to recenter yourself in an FPS.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and so before we get out of here, let's wrap this show up with what some people are calling potentially maybe even the game of the show, which Shu got a little chance because he's a judge to play some today. I've seen the extra trailer of it and have been gushing over it.
Well, Sean talked about it yesterday on the show as well.
Right. It's got to be Call of Duty 4. So, Shu, you play a ton of shooters. What do you think of Call of Duty 4?
I was excited, but I mean, what I played today was essentially Call of Duty in a modern era. It's like very action-packed. There's shit going on all around you, explosions, and it's just intense, high adrenaline, like very fast-paced action. So it was like, what, all they did was slap on modern clothing on people, give me a modern machine gun with laser sights. What I did, like there's one part, I'm running through this burnt-out apartment complex, and the lights are all out, so you had to use night vision. But if you have your laser pointers on, you can see where all your guns are pointing, and then all your teammates and where their guns are pointing. So if you're kind of like in the chaos of war, you're not sure where the enemies are, you just see all these lasers in the cool. darkness, just all pointing like to the second floor of the building next door. So you start to look over there, and you're like, oh yeah, there's a bunch of enemies over there. So there's exciting moments like that. I'm not sure if this was done in the previous Call of Duty. Could you throw grenades back? Was that done before?
Like
yes, you could throw. Yeah, you could toss.
Okay, all right. So I know they did in Medal of Honor. I wasn't sure about COD, but and then the one part that was really awesome, I had to take out these tanks that were driving on a highway, an overhead highway, and you could just barely see them. And then you picked up this weapon. I forgot what it's called, but you could.
It's an anti-tank rocket.
Yeah, it's an anti-tank rocket, and so the cursor comes up, and then you're locked onto the tank, and you pull the trigger, and then I shot it, and then it looked like I put the rocket launcher down, and I'm like, oh, nothing happened. And a second later, the tank just exploded. I'm like, oh, that was weird. What happened? It's like, I thought maybe the game wasn't complete yet. So then I took out the second tank, and the producer who was watching me play is like, oh, this is what's happening. So what happens is you lock onto the tank, you fire this rocket. It's like almost like a fire and forget weapon. It shoots straight up into the air, like hundreds of feet in the air. It's like watching a flare go up into the sky, and then it arcs. It just shoots straight up, and then does a 180, arcs straight down, and it just slams into the tank, and then explodes. And it's like, wow, this is awesome. This is like, I'm using modern day equipment. This is what
you're so used to, like World War II rocket launchers.
Yeah, and it's like I have machine guns with laser sights, so it's not like those old carbines and stuff, that they use in World War II. So it's very exciting and action packed. And what I didn't get to play is what they showed in the trailer at the Microsoft press conference. So that I'm excited about too, because then it's a more stealthy side to it. But storyline-wise, it's a really cool idea. It's about this Russian general who, like old school guy, wants to bring back the glory of Mother Russia. Is getting all the support from ex-KGB guys, ex-army guys, and he's gonna take over Russia. And then, but what they do to kind of distract the Americans, they know the Americans love a good war. They start some shit in the Middle East. So you're gonna fight two campaigns. You're gonna be part of the American campaign in the Middle East, trying to. And as the American, you don't know that this is all this Russian guy's fault. And then you're also going to play a British SAS soldier in the Russian campaign. And then when I asked him, like, will these two the battles kind of, the storylines kind of converge? And he's like, just gave a big smile. I was like, yep, that's a good call. And then so they have really ambitious plans for like this these two different skirmishes happening in different parts of the world, kind of converging into an almost global battle.
It'd be cool if there was an assault on the U.S. homeland. That'd be awesome.
Hey, who knows? That might be the expansion pack or something. Dude, I think this game sounds so tight. What's interesting to me is after all that, these guys have been busting their humps for a couple of years on their game engine. It doesn't sound like the graphics really overwhelmed you that much compared to their other efforts.
Not so much. They're fine, I mean, but in that trailer, the part that excited everybody was you're looking at this grassy field and you don't even notice that, but your partner, who's completely in camouflage and has all the brush and branches and crap on him, he gets up out of the ground and like you could hear the audience go kind of woo, because no one noticed that guy standing right there. And I was talking to a guy from Activision. He said that the developers have changed where that soldier was a couple of times because they didn't quite like it, and he's had trouble spotting him every time. Even when you go into it looking for your camouflage partner, you can't find him, and it's real. It's not some fake video game graphical trick. He's really there. You just can't see. He blends in so well, you can't see it. And what I like about what was shown in the trailer is, usually when you're playing your Ghost Recons or Rainbow Sixes, you're the guy leading and you're the one commanding the other guys. But I don't remember another game where I'm following another guy and he's commanding me. So you're watching him, he has his hand signals and he's like, hey, don't shoot that guy just yet, or take him out, or he's calling out targets to you. So it seems like that you're companion AI is really smart. So I'm really excited to play that part of the game too, the non-traditional COD, like more stealthy stuff.
So you played Call of Duty 2?
Yeah, I didn't play 3, but I did play 2.
Because you played Call of Duty 2, same developer, Call of Duty 4. Just kind of wrap it up with, how do you think the switch from, the very old-style weaponry of World War II, where, you didn't have rocket launchers and long-range fire and forget weapons and that kind of stuff, how much were they able to still have that visceral feel? I mean, when you had the rifle in your hand, did it still have that COD2 feel?
Oh, yeah, punch? Yeah. You're looking down a barrel, you pull in left trigger, you're looking down a barrel, but now you have this huge caliber, high-powered machine gun, right? And it just feels awesome. And in my demo, they did it really smart because they cranked it up. They had 5.1 surround. They turned it up loud, and I'm like, Jesus, you guys like your audio. But it was like rumbling everywhere. You could hear the machine gun bullets like boom, 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 and you could hear the echoes of the gunfire happening all around you. And it's just awesome having like that full modern weaponry. Like I had a grenade launcher underneath my machine gun. Like I said, the laser sights and all that stuff. So yeah, it was just it's a different feeling, and it's great to because all the other games that we're playing with modern weapons, your Ghost Recons and Rainbow Six, you're not really unloading. You're not like, I'm just going to go full auto and just go nuts. You got to be a little bit more careful and tactical. But in this game, it's just like, you know what? Just go nuts. Just like, just go crazy.
That's
and
that black thing. Mm-hmm. That's that black thing.
But it's better than black. It's a lot better than black.
All right, so good enough to be game of the show contender for you?
I don't know. For me, I still like Mass Effect.
Mm-hmm. All right.
I was really impressed with Mass Effect.
Well, we got plenty more to come back and visit tomorrow. We'll definitely get the PC guys in as well because we want to talk about Crysis. And I saw a couple other PC games. I know Jeff Green actually blogged the other day about, or just today, about how PC games are good too. So we'll get that. Shane's got some more stuff he's seen. Shu, thanks for hanging out with us, dude.
Thanks for having me on, guys.
Appreciate it. Don't get in any trouble between now and tomorrow. When we come back tomorrow, we'll have the final show from here in Santa Monica. Until then, we are Ghost.